Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, today we're joined by a Member of Parliament from the Democratic Alliance, Mr. Geordin Hill-Lewis. How are you, Mr. Geordin Hill-Lewis?
I'm well, and you? Cool, nice to be with you.
Fine, thanks, sir. Mr. Geordin Hill-Lewis is the DA Shadow Minister of Finance, if I'm correct.
Correct.
As well as he joined Parliament you're actually interested in joining politics from a very young age. You were a member of the SRC in UCT, or University of Cape Town, for those that don't know. As well as you served as the Chief of Staff for Helen Zille, and now you're a Shadow Minister. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get down to the interview. So, Mr. Hill-Lewis, could you share how being an SRC member inspired you into becoming a politician? How was that whole...
That's a very important question. Before I ran for SRC, I was very interested in politics, obviously. One wouldn't run for SRC if one wasn't interested in politics. But I hadn't yet decided that politics was the thing that I wanted to do for my whole life. And when I got onto the SRC and was successful in the election, I got the opportunity to really be a public representative for the first time. I know a very small kind of public representative, just an SRC member, but nevertheless the first kind of public representative that I was. And it was a hugely rewarding and meaningful year of my life that I got to solve a lot of problems on campus and help a lot of students. And because I was one of the only students that lived in Cape Town on the SRC, most of the other SRC members were from other parts of the country. And that meant that during the vacations, I was still in the office. I was the designated SRC member in the office. And that allowed me to interact with a lot of students who needed help with accommodation, with fees, and really a huge variety of students with lots of different kinds of problems. And it was just very rewarding and meaningful. And it was really during that year that I decided that this is more than just a hobby, more than an interest, that actually this is what I want to do after university, and that is exactly what I did.
So Mr. Hill-Lewis, apparently you launched the first Democratic Alliance Youth Organization branch, if I'm correct, in the University of Cape Town. While you're in varsity, what difficulty did you have mobilizing people to join a branch, especially something like a branch that had never existed and it was the first one in the country?
What difficulties did we experience?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, firstly, the university was probably not that keen on having us, but we pushed through and got registered as a proper student organization. And then, of course, the major difficulty with ever starting an organization is attracting new people and attracting activists and members, so that it's not just you on your own with a cell phone and trying to run everything. So you've got to, if you start an organization, you've got to have people to help you drive it. And so what we had to do was find some interesting things to do on campus and to get people talking about us so that we could attract members and activists and volunteers. And once we had done that, then you could build a branch from there using the volunteers' time and effort to build output from there.
So in 2009, the Honourable Helen Zille asked you to join her chief, or to be rather her chief of staff. Could you explain the roles and duties in being a chief of staff?
Yeah, sure. I was very privileged to join her office in 2009 as her chief of staff. The chief of staff runs the team that works for the leader. So it doesn't run the entire organization. But the leader himself or herself, in this case, has got a team of people that work personally for the leader. There's a speechwriter and researcher and media officers and secretaries and people that deal with a huge number of public correspondence that comes in on a daily basis. So it's a small team of probably 10 people that work directly with the leader. And the manager of that team is the chief of staff. And he or she is responsible for making sure that the leader has a proper program of action, that they have appropriate opportunities to communicate the party's message to the public, that they are building a public brand and awareness around themselves and the party, and that they are what we call in politics on message, that they have a clear message, that the public understands what it is, and that they're repeating it as often as possible.
So how have you, as Mr. Hill-Lewis, used your constituency area that you have been assigned by the Democratic Alliance to mobilize people, or rather to increase followership in that area?
I've had 3 constituencies in my time in Parliament. First in a place called Luyolo in Cape Town, which is a very rough part of Cape Town, very poor, mainly informal settlements. And then after that I was in Tableview and Durbanville, a very different part of Cape Town, very middle class. And now I'm totally out of Cape Town in a town called George on the Southern Cape on the Garden Route.
Yes, yes.
And in all of those constituencies, what I try to do is make sure that we have branches in every community, that those branches are active on community issues, that they are doing what we call driving issues. That means that they've got to find issues that members of the public care about in the communities, and they've got to make sure that they are representing their community on those issues, whether it be crime or condition of the roads or housing or lighting or whatever it is. They must find local issues that people care about and drive those issues relentlessly. And exactly as we did at UCT, when you drive issues that people care about, it attracts people to give up their time to volunteer in the organization. And so that's what we do.
Oh, true. I was watching one of your, I wouldn't really call it an interview, but your videos on, it was a video of ENCA, one of the journalists were asking you during the budget speech, and you answered a question where your answer was, for every 100 rand the government has, 46 rand goes to salaries.
Yes.
That was one of your answers. I'd like to know, how do you, as the Democratic Alliance, work out such figures? How do you work out that for every 100 rand government has, 46 rand goes to salaries? How is that all worked out and calculated?
We've got access to publicly available budget data, and so we know exactly how much government takes in tax revenue every year, roughly 1.4 trillion rand. And we know from publicly available data how much the government spends on salaries every year. And so, when you speak about trillions and billions and hundreds of billions, actually, even me, it struggled to conceive of how big those numbers are. Members of the public are very confused by such enormous numbers. So it's better to simplify those numbers to a simple analogy that everyone can understand. If you get 100 rand, and before you have done anything else with your money, paid for education, paid for transport, built new infrastructure like roads and dams and so on, you've already given out 46 rand of the 100 rand just on salaries, then you can see what the problem is. Very simply, it's clearly that is not a sustainable situation.
So being the DA shadow minister, could I ask, what are your plans when it comes to what suggestions rather do you have for government when it comes to addressing the problem of the missing middle that apparently are too rich for NSFAS, but are too poor to actually pay for university fees or varsity fees? How would you plan on dealing with the missing middle problems?
So what we proposed in the past is that every single learner in South Africa who academically qualifies for access to university should be able to go. So funding should never be an obstacle to attending university in South Africa if you qualify for university. And because that is a hugely wasted national resource. If there's someone who can't go to university because they don't have the money, but they are extremely clever and should be contributing to our academic development and progress as a country, then that is a waste, and we can't allow that. It's a waste for that person individually because it means that they cannot fulfill their potential, and it's a loss to the country. So every person who qualifies should be able to go to university with funding. That does not mean that it should be free, though, because in the same way that it is a waste and a loss to the country for that person not to go, they also have to realize that it is a hugely expensive investment that the country is giving them to pay for them to go to university. So once they have graduated and got a job, they should be required to pay back a portion of that in the form of loan finance. So what would bring down that debt is if they do very well at university, then they would get some forgiveness on that, and some of it, a portion of it would be written off to incentivize excellent results and fresh research. But generally, that would mean that everyone in the missing middle would be catered for, and that no one in South Africa would miss university because they can't afford it.
So my next question is, how has the DA managed to empower or uplift the youth?
Sorry, there's just one more thing that I want to say on your previous question. The important distinction between that and just totally free education is that those, under our proposal, those who can afford to pay for it still pay for it themselves, and they don't rely on the public to pay for them. And that's very important because there's no reason why the public should have to subsidize people who can afford to pay for their own university. The public are already extremely stretched in this country, and they are asked to pay for far too much. And they shouldn't have to pay for that when people can already afford to go themselves. Sorry, then just repeat your other question.
Yes, my next question was, how has the DA managed to empower the youth or uplift the youth, rather?
Well, we're a political party that is the official opposition in South Africa, so we We hold the government accountable for their economic strategy, their economic policy, for the way that they implement their youth development strategies, and we offer an alternative. And we say that if the DA was in government, this is how we would do it. That's what we do nationally. Where we are in government, we also say this is what we offer our alternative, and we implement it in government. And there we've done a really excellent job in growing the economy with the lowest unemployment in the country. The biggest beneficiary of that low unemployment is young people. And that we do that by pursuing economic policy that works, that is not obsessed with state control over every aspect of the economy, but which recognizes that really the people who grow the economy and create jobs are mainly young entrepreneurs, and that they need focus, they need support from government, and they need a regulatory system that actually supports them and doesn't make it much harder for them to succeed.
My next question is around the issue of shadow ministers. We, from our team and from peers that I know, is we don't understand the term shadow minister. What does the term shadow minister mean? What's the difference between being a shadow minister and being a minister? Well, obviously when you're part of the ruling party.
Sure. So when you are part of the party that wins the election, I don't like to say ruling party because no one rules over us. We have a government and we have a governing party, but we are citizens and the government actually serves us, not the other way around. So no one rules over us. But we have a governing party who has won the election, and therefore they get the right to form a cabinet made up of ministers. And those ministers each one of them runs a government department. And the official opposition also forms what's called a shadow cabinet. Now, the shadow cabinet is made up of shadow ministers, each of whom is assigned to essentially be the shadow of the government minister, and to follow them and to hold them accountable and to make sure that they are delivering on their mandate. But the shadow minister does not run any government department. We are basically normal members of parliament. We are all members of parliament, but we are there to hold a particular minister accountable.
And then, for example, I am currently 16 years old, and the DA Youth Alliance allows members to join from the age of 16. How would you make the DA Youth Alliance appealing to myself and my peers? What would make us want to join your party, especially peers of my age that are still in school, from 16 to the ages of 18?
Okay, well, I joined the DA when I was your age, and I found it very attractive at the time because you are obviously aware of what's happening in society around you, and you take an interest in your country, and that's fantastic. And I'm sure that at some level you must be concerned about the direction that the country is going in. And I certainly was concerned about that, and I did a lot of reading and figured out that, well, the party that was closest to the things that I believed in for society and my own worldview was the DA. The thing that was exciting about it for me at the time was that you could be involved in something that was important for the future of our community, our society, our country. And I think that every person in life, no matter, even if you don't go into politics, you must do something that gives you a sense of purpose and meaning. And for me, maybe I could have studied medicine or something like that. I think that would have given me a lot of sense of purpose and meaning. But politics as well gives me a lot of sense of purpose and meaning. And, whatever it is that you do, if you become a teacher or even if you go into business, that's fine. Just as long as you have a sense of personal mission, that you are doing something bigger than just yourself, and that it's not just about getting the biggest car or the nicest jeans or the best cell phone or whatever, but it's actually about contributing to the world that we live in. And for me, politics was very attractive in that regard, because I saw that there was a battle of ideas happening about the future.
Yes.
And I want to be involved in that battle of ideas about the future and make sure that that I can influence it as much as I can. And that's what still keeps me very interested in politics.
And then what should we as a country be doing to address the current situation of not many youth wanting or interested in joining certain political structures within our country?
Of not many youth?
Yes, not many youth.
Yes. Well, you see, I've never been that worried about that problem, because I think that young people naturally are not really interested in politics and society, and I'm really thrilled that you are, but I'm sure that you also know that you are probably the exception, not the norm.
Yes, I do.
And that's always how it's going to be. But what generally tends to happen is that as people get older, they get a job, they maybe they live in a house where they must pay a bond, or they have kids and they start to worry about their kids' future, and they become much more politically involved as they get older. So you've got to try and engage with the youth and get as many of them involved as possible. But also you've got to realize you probably will see that person again in 10 years' time when they are much more interested and when life has caught up with them and the realities and worries and pressures of the future.
So I was reading a statement just a few days ago, a news article, that stated that the Parliament of South Africa, the average age of the members is about 54, 55. And this became worrying to me when I thought that how could we allow, well, as a whole country, allow people of a certain age to be in Parliament making decisions about us for the future?
Yes.
So I'd like to know that how has the DA managed to put youth in Parliament or to actually give youth a voice?
That's a great question. I think this is one of the greatest things about the DA actually is that we have a system that rewards talent and merit over political loyalty. So in the ANC, you've got very well established branch networks around the country, and they nominate the candidates for Parliament. And so unless you are friends with a whole lot of branch chairs and you have got a whole lot of patronage support, then there's no way that you can break through. There's like a concrete ceiling. So I'll tell you that at UCT with me, there were many people in the ANC Youth League and SASCO at UCT who were really impressive, excellent people. And many of them I'm still friends with today, so some quite good friends. And others I'm still in touch with. But not one of them has been able to break through the ANC's concrete ceiling and actually get into an elected position in the ANC. And that is because the ANC system kills young talent. It's just very difficult to break through. In the DA, we've gone for a totally different system. We've said that we're going to remove those local party bosses, the branch chairs and the constituency chairs and so on. We're going to remove them from the system as much as possible and make the testing and election of candidates as objective as possible and focus on talent and ability rather than patronage. And of course, no system can work perfectly. There's still problems, but fortunately, you can see the results is that it's way easier for a young, talented person to break through in the DA than it is in any other party in South Africa. Because I don't know the updated numbers, you can check on this, but at one point there were only 9 people in the South African Parliament under the age of 35, of which 8 of them were in the DA.
I read the stats yesterday, last night, yes, I read some of the stats. I think it's about 18 currently, I'm not sure. I think if I'm correct, about 18. Yeah. And then, how should we as South Africans build a strong spirit of patriotism in our youth? Because it all starts at a young age for you to start caring for the country and treating it with respect.
That's so great, man. I love that question. Yes, we need young people to show respect and pride in their country and not just treat it as if it's just junk. You know, I see this all the time. From tiny little things like young people littering and throwing things down wherever they are, to the culture of heavy drinking and just running our country down and the engagement in crime and so on. There's lots of examples. It's a very good question. I'm not exactly sure. I don't think I have answers for how we can instill a sense of patriotism. I just know that in my own life, my parents started from a very young age to make me think and talk about what was happening in society around us. And you don't need to be wealthy or privileged or anything like that to have those discussions. We certainly weren't. My mom is a nurse that works in worked in public hospitals in South Africa. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, but we always had those discussions about what is happening in South Africa now. What do you think about that? What are you worried about? What are you excited about? And if you start to have those discussions and you start to become aware of the community around you, then you're more likely to take pride in it. So I think that there's probably something there, but I don't claim to have all the answers. What do you think in your life has made you patriotic?
Well, what has made me patriotic is I've always stood up for South Africa. I'd rather not watch foreign content. It starts from small things like TV. I have stopped, basically watching too much foreign content. I've started, even before I spoke to you, I spoke to quite a number of local celebrities and spoke about how we should, as South Africans, be increasing the local content that we're watching so that we can uplift one another. And it starts from small as the youth. Because the youth were not so interested in reading books, not all of us. I know that from experience. We usually watch TV. So it starts from those small things, the content that we watch, because that plays on our minds and our psychology. And that show, and I've realized by what people watch that they are mostly attracted to the Western world of doing things. They don't treat South Africa with as much respect as it should be treated with. I've got quite a number of friends that have traveled around the world, and they will tell me that South Africa is a poor, junk country, all sorts can't be fixed, and all that stuff. And sometimes you feel like, I feel sometimes that there's no hope for the country when I look at most people not taking much care into the situation of the country. Because lots of people like to refer to the last decade as a wasted decade, rather.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think there's lots of stuff, or lots of things that each decade has provided us with. And for example, Mandela's era was good for that time. Thabo Mbeki's era was good for the fact that we could survive the global recession in 2008. And the last decade, well, Zuma did manage to create a few jobs, but we do understand what went on the other side. But he created more jobs than what was happening in Thabo Mbeki's time in terms of the public service area. So there's a bit of positives, a bit of negatives.
Yeah. I must let me just differ with you on that point. Creating jobs in the public service is not sustainable. That's what leads to us spending 46 out of every 100 rand that the government has on salaries. That is Jacob Zuma's legacy. It is absolutely not sustainable, and it's the number one reason South Africa is very near to bankruptcy today, is because we are spending such an enormous amount of money on the system, the public service, and of course, it's not the only reason. There's Eskom and there's all of the other things as well. What Mbeki got right, I'm no fan of Mbeki, by the way, don't get me wrong, but what he did get right was understanding what is necessary for basic economic growth. The only people who can fix unemployment in South Africa is not the government, it's entrepreneurs. People like young people like yourselves who are prepared to take a risk and start a business, but then they need a government that actually backs them up. And that is what Mbeki by and large got right, and that's why unemployment actually dropped very sharply in the mid 2000s. Zuma tried to make up for that when unemployment started to go up again. Tried to make up for that in the public sector, but that is never sustainable.
And then another thing that usually, as people of my age taught in terms of economics and accounting, we usually get taught on how South Africa's mixed economy. And obviously, as the Democratic Alliance, the party is not really on the far left-wing party, and obviously it doesn't believe in the Marxist system or socialist system or the Leninist system. Yes, so basically, do you believe that government should not be running SOEs, and rather those SOEs should be privatized completely, because then they will chase for profits rather than chasing just for providing a service? Well,
absolutely, I believe that. And it's not really a question of belief; it's a question of evidence. We must approach public policy questions by putting aside preconceived beliefs. Beliefs are best reserved for church and religion. They are not. They shouldn't be brought that much into the realm of public policy. Public policy must be based on evidence, and there is really overwhelming, unquestionable global evidence that governments run companies very, very badly. There's a simple reason for that. It's not because they're incompetent or corrupt. Sometimes that is true, but it's actually just because of a question of incentives. People will do what they are incentivized to do. If there's no incentive to run something efficiently, then they won't run it efficiently. In the private sector, there is obviously an incentive to run something efficiently, because if you don't run it efficiently, you go out of business. Your customers just go elsewhere. So, ask Nokia what happens when you start messing around and making rubbish phones. You probably don't even remember the time when Nokia used to make cell phones, but trust me that once upon a time they did. And they got lazy and they got arrogant, and next thing they got killed by the competitors. And there's lots of other examples, even in South Africa. Ask MultiChoice, DSTV, how they are getting their customer base stolen away from them by just better service competitors like Netflix. You've got to keep up with the times and stay innovative and efficient, otherwise the market will take you out by customers making decisions. And that is wonderful because there is zero waste. There's no dead weight loss to society. There is an efficient allocation of resources, and everyone gets the best outcome possible out of it. So when you have a huge, inefficient state-owned company, there's no incentive to make a profit. There's no incentive to be efficient and do not waste money. And so it's not a South African phenomenon. This is the crazy thing is people say, well, you just put everything down to corruption and inefficiency. Haven't you got any faith in South Africa? Well, actually, this has got nothing to do with South Africa. This is global evidence that wherever you remove the incentive to be efficient, what will follow is gross inefficiency. It's really not a surprise at all. It's not rocket science. So what we've got to do is get the government out of those spaces where it doesn't need to be. Government must restrict itself to those things that it has to do. And there's a lot of things that it has to do. The other thing that is often said about believers or adherents to the market economy is that, well, you just don't want any government. That's not true at all. There are lots of really important things that the government has to do, and I would much prefer them to focus on the basics that they have to do and do it really well, and let other people take that burden off their shoulders, and let other people do the things that the government doesn't need to do. Let them do it much better. Let me give you an example, just one example. The government doesn't have to generate electricity. Actually, very few governments do generate electricity around the world. Maybe 50 years ago they did, because there was no such thing as solar power and wind power and independent power companies, but now they are absolutely common. So governments in South Africa is still stuck in a 1970s power generation model, but we're in 2020 now. They've got to move with the times and stay innovative and efficient. And the fact is that in 2020, the government has got no role to play in generating power. Now, if we had private sector competitive power generators, they would generate much cheaper electricity for you and me and every other family in South Africa. So we'd get the same service at half the cost, and there would be no loss to the public, because currently what we are doing, well, not you're not a taxpayer yet, but certainly your parents, what we are doing is we are paying our electricity bill every month, very expensive bill, and we are forking out every year tens of billions of rands to cover Eskom's losses, because it is so grossly inefficient. Now, this is just not the way to run a company in the 21st century. And that is why we make the argument for privatization. I'm sorry to have answered in such a lengthy way.
You spoke about tax now, just about paying tax and all that stuff. And I know I was listening to, I think it was one of John Steenhuisen's speeches in Parliament, where he mentioned that government spends 29 billion rand on 1% of public servants, well, the top end of public servants. So I'd like to know, how do you, as the Democratic Alliance, how does your organization, how would you deal with such problems? As obviously government, you can't really retrench people. Those are the rules that you can't retrench people. So how would you deal with such a problem? Do you cut salaries? What do you do?
No, there's no rule that says you can't retrench people. It is difficult. It's tricky to do, but the problem is the government has never been willing to even try. So I do believe that there are far too many very highly paid, overpaid senior managers in the civil service in South Africa. Those are the 29 billion that you are talking about. All of them earn more than 1.2 million rand a year. And these are not people who are delivering frontline services like doctors and surgeons. We are excluding all of those, judges, magistrates, all of those. They earn big salaries, but at least they are delivering frontline services. They're saving people's lives every day, whatever the case is. I'm talking about head office managers that spend a lot of time in their office in Pretoria and never interact with the public. There's a lot of evidence for how really, really inefficient and unproductive those government departments are, and they earn enormous salaries. So the case that we've made is that you've got to freeze their salaries to bring them more in line with the private sector and to save the state some money, and importantly protect the salaries of teachers and nurses and doctors and police officers and firemen and so on that deliver actual frontline services. But freeze the salary of that tiny little 1% right at the top, you actually end up saving yourself a huge amount of money. And then over time, yes, I'm afraid, let's be honest, we have to reduce that number. We cannot continue with 30,000 people in the civil service all earning 1.2 million rand or more. And trust me, when I say or more, I mean much more. There's some of them that earn 4 and 6 and 8 million rand a year. And there's very little to show for it, I'm afraid.
So lastly, why should the people of South Africa vote DA in next year's local election, 2021 local elections?
Well, if they care about competent government and government actually getting done what it says it can get done, if they care about quality basic services where they live, then there really is only one choice, and that is the DA. We have proven time and time again that we can deliver in local government. We can grow the economy. We can create jobs. We do so with very strict approach to corruption. We root out corruption wherever we find it. We take it extremely seriously. And so we deliver value for money, good quality services to the public without corruption and with proper transparency and accountability. And ultimately, that is what the election is about. What do you want for your family? What is best for you and your family? Do you want your neighborhood to work and get better over time? Or do you want it to get worse over time? If you want it to get better over time, you should vote for the DA. If you're happy for it to get worse over time, then you can vote for another party.
Thank you, Mr. Hill-Lewis, for joining us in today's interview. It has really been a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll just end the recording now because